The air in Sundown Creek was thick with the scent of dry earth and brewing trouble. Eleanor Vance, her hands raw from scrubbing floors at the town's grimiest saloon, was a ghost in her own life. At 20, she carried the weight of a town's judgment, a whispered curse trailing her every step. It was the winter of 1888, and the unforgiving landscape of Wyoming mirrored the unforgiving hearts of its people. Her father's ill-fated land deal, a desperate gambit against a ruthless tycoon, had left her orphaned and destitute. The town, once friendly, now saw her as a symbol of failure, a reminder of the fragility of their own fortunes. Her only friend was Mr. Abernathy, a grizzled old blacksmith with a heart of gold and a fondness for whiskey. He saw past the rumors and treated her with a kindness that was as rare as a spring rain. But even his friendship was a source of gossip. A Vance girl and a drunkard. They'd sneer, their words sharper than any knife. One blustery evening, as a storm brewed on the horizon, the saloon owner, a burly man named Jebediah Thorne, cornered her. His eyes held a cold cruelty that made her skin crawl. "I've had enough of your kind, girl," he growled, his voice a low rumble. "You're bad for business. You're poison." Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. "Please, Mr. Thorne," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I can work harder. I'll take less pay, just don't throw me out." But Thorne's face was a mask of stone. "Get out, and don't come back." Tears welled in her eyes, but she fought them back. Crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. As she gathered her meager belongings, a hush fell over the saloon. The double doors swung open with a dramatic creak, and a figure loomed in the doorway, silhouetted by the dying light of the sunset. It was Silas Vance, the richest rancher in the county. He was a man of few words and a reputation built on land and a steely will. At 35, he was a mystery to the town, a solitary figure who commanded respect and a healthy dose of fear. His presence was a shock, like a sudden drop in the temperature. He strode in, his gaze sweeping the room, his eyes the color of a stormy sea settling on Eleanor. The tension in the room was palpable. He turned to Thorne, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "She's not going anywhere." The saloon, once a place of boisterous noise, was now silent, the air thick with unspoken questions. Thorne, for all his bluster, visibly shrank under Silas's gaze. "Mr. Vance, with all due respect, the girl is a public nuisance. She's my wife," Silas said, the words hanging in the air like a thunderclap. A collective gasp swept through the room. Eleanor's eyes widened in disbelief. She had never spoken a word to the man, not a single one. Her mind reeled. Was this a sick joke? Silas paid her no mind, his focus on Thorne. "She works for me now. She'll be a part of my household. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me." His words were a final, unarguable decree. He took Eleanor by the arm, his grip firm but not unkind, and led her out into the cold Wyoming night. The silence in the wagon was deafening. The only sound was the rhythmic creak of the wheels on the dirt road and the sigh of the wind. Finally, as they neared his sprawling ranch, a fortress of stone and wood against the wild prairie, he spoke. "My sister is a sickly woman. My home needs a woman's touch to manage it. I need a wife." He didn't look at her, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "You need a home, a name, a future." Eleanor was stunned. "But why me?" He finally turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You're a Vance. You have a good name, even if it's been dragged through the mud." "My own family name is a source of ridicule in the eastern circles. Your name carries a legacy that can help me secure my holdings. My sister needs a companion she can trust. I have heard about your plight. I know what they did to your father. And your name will give me a sanctuary, won't it?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "But they will never accept it. They will still see me as a disgrace." "They will accept it when they have to," he said, his eyes a steel grey. They will learn to respect what I protect. This is a business arrangement, Eleanor. We will respect each other's boundaries. I will give you a home, safety, and a name. In return, you will manage my household, and we will present a united front." The cold wind whipped around them, and Eleanor found herself in a position she never thought possible. A sanctuary, a chance at a new life, a home. It was a deal with a man who was both a stranger and a savior. She thought of the cold, the hunger, the shame. The choice wasn't a choice at all. I accept. Life at the Vance Ranch was a stark contrast to her previous existence. The house was a masterpiece of rustic elegance, filled with heavy oak furniture and the scent of beeswax and old books. Silas's sister, a frail woman named Eliza, was a delicate soul, her face pale and her hands perpetually trembling. She took an immediate liking to Eleanor, finding comfort in her quiet strength and gentle nature. But the silence between Eleanor and Silas was a constant presence. He was a man of habits, up before dawn, working in the fields, returning at dusk, his face set in a mask of exhaustion. They shared meals in a formal silence, their relationship a carefully constructed facade. Eleanor, for her part, threw herself into her new responsibilities, managing the household with a meticulous efficiency that impressed Eliza. The town, meanwhile, was in an uproar. The marriage of Silas Vance and Eleanor Vance was the sole topic of conversation. The powerful families, the same ones who had turned their backs on her, now treated her with a forced, resentful courtesy. At social gatherings, their smiles never reached their eyes. The women would whisper behind their hands, their words like daggers. "She's just a common servant," they'd hiss. "He's a fool. He'll regret it." One afternoon, a letter arrived, stamped with a powerful seal. It was from the town's most influential man, Elias Thorne, a close relative of the saloon owner Jebediah. Elias was a man of immense wealth and influence, known for his ruthless business practices. The letter was an invitation to a formal ball, a gathering of the town's elite. It was a test, a challenge, a public spectacle they intended to use to humiliate her. Eleanor's hands shook as she held the thick parchment. She knew what this was, a trap, a stage for them to tear her down. She showed the letter to Silas. He read it, his face unreadable. "We will go," he said simply. "But they'll be cruel," she said, her voice small. "They'll make a spectacle of me." He looked at her then, his gaze intense. "Let them try. You are my wife, Eleanor. My name is your shield. You must stand tall." The night of the ball, she wore a simple but elegant dress, a deep emerald green that brought out the color of her eyes. Silas, in his finest suit, looked every bit the powerful rancher. As they entered the Thorne mansion, a hush fell over the room. The air was thick with a cocktail of curiosity, envy, and thinly veiled contempt. Eleanor felt 1,000 eyes on her, their gazes like pinpricks on her skin. She held her head high, her chin tilted just so, a mask of calm confidence. She was a Vance, and she would not be broken. The night was a whirlwind of polite, venomous conversation. The women, with their painted smiles and sharp tongues, circled her like vultures. One, the wife of a powerful banker, approached her. "Mrs. Vance, what a lovely surprise to see you here. I heard you've been a busy bee at the ranch. I suppose a woman of your limited background must find it a great challenge." Eleanor met her gaze, a serene smile on her face. "On the contrary, Mrs. Peterson, it's a great comfort to finally have a proper home. The challenge was living without one." The woman's smile faltered, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Eleanor, for the first time, felt a surge of power. She was no longer the destitute girl scrubbing floors. She was Silas Vance's wife. As the night wore on, a new twist was revealed. A conversation she overheard in a quiet corner of the room sent a jolt of ice through her veins. Two men, both close associates of Elias Thorne, were talking in hushed tones. "Thorne's not worried about Vance," one said. "He has a legal claim to that land. The old man's land deal was fraudulent. We just have to hold out until the court date." The other man chuckled. "He's not a fool. He knows his case is weak. That's why he got himself a wife, to distract from his precarious position." Eleanor's blood ran cold. The land, her father's land. It was Silas's land they were talking about. Her marriage was a shield, a distraction, a pawn in a larger game of power and deceit. Her heart, which had just begun to warm to her new life, now felt like a block of ice. Was this all it was? A cynical transaction? She found Silas, a grim look on his face, talking to Elias Thorne. "Your sudden marriage is certainly a spectacle, Vance," Thorne was saying, a smug smirk on his face. "I wonder what your new wife knows about your little legal issues." Silas's eyes were like a storm at sea. "My affairs are my own, Thorne, as are my family's." Eleanor's eyes met Silas's across the crowded room. She saw the weary determination in his face, the silent battle he was fighting. A new truth dawned on her. This wasn't just a business arrangement. This was a war for her family's legacy, for his land, for their future. The people who had destroyed her father were the very people trying to destroy her husband. She walked up to them, her spine straight as an arrow. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I know about my father's land deal. I know what you did." Thorne's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of shock. Silas, for the first time, looked at her with a hint of surprise, a question in his eyes. Eleanor had just thrown a stone into a still pond, and the ripples would be felt by everyone. The drive back to the ranch was a new kind of silent. The tension was thick, heavy with unspoken accusations. Eleanor, her mind a whirlwind of hurt and betrayal, felt the weight of her discovery. He hadn't just saved her. He had used her. When they were finally inside the house, she turned on him, her voice quiet but filled with a simmering anger. "You knew," she said, her eyes burning. "You knew they were a threat to your land. You knew they had been a part of my father's downfall. You used me as a distraction." Silas didn't flinch. "I married you to protect you. My ranch is your home. They will not touch you again. The law is a tool, Eleanor. Sometimes we must use whatever is at our disposal to ensure justice." "But you didn't tell me," she said, her voice cracking. "You let me believe this was a choice for me, not a choice for you. I was a pawn in your game." He sighed, a rare display of weary resignation. "The truth is complex. Your father was a good man, but he was too trusting. He was swindled by Thorne and his associates. They have been trying to take this land for years. This ranch is not just land, Eleanor. It's my legacy, my family's legacy. They have also been trying to secure it from me for a long time. They are ruthless. But what about my name, my father's name? Was that all just a lie? Your name is the only thing that could tie the two issues together. The same people who wronged you and your father are the ones who want my land. By marrying you, I am not just protecting you. I am showing them that the two Vances are now one. I am showing them that I will not be swayed by their threats. We stand together, Eleanor." Eleanor looked at him, her heart a battleground of conflicting emotions. Anger, hurt, and a strange new feeling. Respect. She saw the lines of exhaustion on his face, the burden he carried. He wasn't a hero, but he wasn't a villain either. He was a man fighting for what was his, and he was doing it with the only tools he had. "So, what do we do now?" she asked, her voice softer. "We fight back," he said, his eyes a steely blue. "But we do it my way. We don't just win in court. We win in the court of public opinion. We show them that their greed and deceit will not stand." It was a fragile truce, born of mutual necessity and a shared enemy. The distance between them remained, but now a new kind of unspoken understanding began to bridge the gap. They were no longer strangers sharing a house. They were allies, two Vances against the world. The days that followed were a testament to their newfound partnership. They spent hours poring over old documents, records of her father's land deal, and Silas's own property deeds. Eleanor, with her sharp mind and an eye for detail, found inconsistencies in the legal documents that her father had signed. The language was deliberately confusing, designed to trick an honest man. The names of the witnesses, the dates, the small, seemingly insignificant details that could unravel a fraudulent claim. Silas, in turn, used his connections and influence to gather more information. He spoke to his foreman, a loyal old hand who had witnessed Thorne's men harassing her father years ago. He spoke to the local sheriff, a man who, while hesitant, valued Silas's standing in the community. But the real power lay in their combined efforts. Eleanor, with her first-hand knowledge of her father's plight, was able to pinpoint the lies in Thorne's narrative. She remembered her father's stories, his worries, the way he would pore over the papers with a furrowed brow. She remembered the specific details he would mention, the names of the men who had visited him, the promises they had made, and the subtle threats they had whispered. They began to work as a team, their interactions no longer formal and distant. There were quiet evenings spent in the study, a flickering lantern casting long shadows on the walls, their heads bent over legal papers. Silas would explain the intricacies of property law, and Eleanor would recall a detail about her father's dealings. The work was demanding, but it forged a connection between them, a shared purpose that was stronger than any forced pleasantry. One evening, as they were packing away the documents, Silas looked at her. "You have a good head on your shoulders, Eleanor. You're more resourceful than they gave you credit for." A warm flush spread through her cheeks. It was the first time he had paid her a genuine compliment, and it meant more than she would have ever admitted. "And you're a better man than they say you are, Silas Vance." A small, genuine smile touched his lips, a rare sight that transformed his stern face. "I suppose we're both full of surprises, aren't we?" The outside world continued to watch them, but their combined strength was a fortress. The rumors still flew, but they were now met with a quiet, unshakable confidence. The town watched as the unlikely couple, the disgraced orphan, and the reclusive rancher began to turn the tide. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mr. Abernathy, the old blacksmith, had been a witness to the final fatal land deal. He had been there, drunk, but not so drunk as to not remember the details. He had seen the way Thorne and his men had pressured Eleanor's father. He had seen the falsified documents, but he was too afraid to speak up, a man of little consequence against the power of Elias Thorne. Eleanor, with her newfound confidence, decided to visit him. She found him at his dusty forge, a grim look on his face. "I know you were there, Mr. Abernathy," she said, her voice low and steady. "I need you to tell me what you saw." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "I was a coward, Eleanor. I was too afraid to stand up to them. They'd have ruined me." "They've already ruined my family," she said, her voice filled with a quiet passion. "They're trying to ruin Silas. We have to stop them. We need the truth." Mr. Abernathy, seeing the woman she had become, was moved. He told her everything, his story, a painful, detailed account of her father's last days. He remembered the specific words Thorne had used, the threats, the promises. He remembered the moment they had him sign the falsified documents. "They made him think he was getting a fair deal," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "They used his desperation against him. He was so worried about your future, Eleanor. He thought he was doing the right thing." Eleanor listened, her heart aching for her father. The old man's words were a confirmation of what she had always suspected. She had found a witness, a true ally. She and Silas planned a public confrontation. They would bring the evidence to the town hall, a place where everyone could hear, and they would demand a public hearing. The stakes were high. If they failed, they would not only lose the land, but also their reputation and all they had built. The day of the public hearing was overcast, the sky a bruised purple. The town hall was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Elias Thorne stood at the front of the room, a smug look on his face. He believed he had all the power, all the connections. He was a force to be reckoned with. Silas, with Eleanor by his side, presented their case. He spoke of the falsified documents, of the witnesses they had. Thorne scoffed, his laughter a harsh, jarring sound. "This is a farce, a desperate attempt to cling to what is not yours." "Is it?" Eleanor said, her voice echoing in the silent room. She then called Mr. Abernathy to the stand. The old man, with a shaky voice, began to speak. He spoke of the day of the land deal, of the lies, the manipulation, and the blatant fraud. His testimony, raw and honest, captivated the room. Thorne's face went pale. The people in the room, once so quick to judge Eleanor, now watched with a mix of shock and horror. They saw the truth, ugly and undeniable, laid bare before them. But the final blow was yet to come. Eleanor, with a quiet strength, stepped forward and showed the court a carefully preserved letter written by her father just before his death, detailing the fraud, the people involved, and his fear for her future. It was the final puzzle piece, the physical, emotional evidence they needed. The reaction was immediate. Thorne and his associates were stunned, their carefully constructed facade of respectability crumbling before their eyes. The town, which had once turned its back on Eleanor, now looked at her with a new kind of respect. The story spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the county. The powerful, once so untouchable, were now on the defense. A court case was filed, and with the new evidence and testimony, the judge ruled in favor of Silas Vance. The land was his, and more importantly, the legacy of Eleanor's father was restored. The public humiliation was Thorne's, and the community had witnessed it. He had been a man of power, but now he was nothing more than a swindler, a man who had stolen from a desperate man and a destitute girl. But justice, as always, came with a price. Thorne, a man of immense ego, refused to go down quietly. He made a last-ditch effort to ruin Silas, spreading rumors about his business, trying to turn his allies against him. He hired thugs to intimidate them, to burn down their barn, to make their life a living hell. The threats were a constant, unsettling presence. One night the hired thugs, fueled by Thorne's bitterness, ambushed Silas on his way back from town. They beat him, leaving him bruised and bloody on the side of the road. Eleanor found him, her heart in her throat, and brought him back to the ranch. As she nursed his wounds, the emotional wall between them finally, irrevocably, broke down. He looked at her, his face a canvas of pain, his eyes filled with a raw vulnerability she had never seen before. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice raspy. "I'm sorry I put you through this. I'm sorry for everything." Eleanor's eyes welled up with tears. "Don't be," she said, her voice filled with a quiet strength. "We're in this together, and we will see this through." The attack on Silas was the final straw. The town, which had been quietly supportive, now rallied around them. The sheriff, a man who had long been under Thorne's influence, was now forced to act. He had no choice. The public outrage was too great. Thorne was arrested along with his hired thugs. The once feared man, now a prisoner, was a shadow of his former self. His power, built on greed and deceit, had crumbled. The town, once so quick to judge, now saw the truth, that power without a foundation of justice is a fragile thing. The town, in an unprecedented show of support, organized a celebration for Eleanor and Silas. It was not a formal ball, but a community gathering, a true coming together. They had seen her fight for what was right, and they had seen her win. They saw her, not as the disgraced orphan, but as a woman of courage, a symbol of resilience. At the center of the celebration stood Eleanor, not as Silas Vance's wife, but as Eleanor, a woman who had found her voice. She felt the warmth of their acceptance, a genuine, heartfelt warmth that was more precious than any amount of money. Silas, standing beside her, looked at the crowd, then at her. He took her hand, a gesture of affection that was both public and deeply personal. He had fought a battle for land and legacy, but he had found something far more valuable, a partner, an ally, a true love. The morning after the celebration was a new kind of peaceful. The sky was a clear, brilliant blue, the air crisp and clean. The dust of the past had settled, and a new life had begun. The threats were gone, the enemies defeated. Eleanor and Silas stood on the porch of their home, the vast expanse of the ranch stretching before them. The land was theirs, but it was more than just a piece of property. It was a symbol of their shared struggle, their shared victory. Silas turned to her, his face soft, a look of profound emotion in his eyes. "You saved me, Eleanor," he said, his voice filled with a genuine sincerity that was more powerful than any grand pronouncement. "I thought I was fighting a war for my land, but I was fighting for a partner." She smiled, her heart full. "And I thought I was fighting for my name, but I was fighting for a home." Their life was a quiet symphony of shared moments, of morning coffee on the porch, of work in the fields, of quiet evenings spent together. The business arrangement had evolved into a true partnership, a bond of trust and respect, and a love that was deeper than any initial transaction could have ever been. They were two people, once strangers, now a single, unbreakable force. They had found their sanctuary, not just in a house or a name, but in each other. Their story was a testament to the power of a woman's resilience, the strength of a true partnership, and the quiet, undeniable truth that justice, when fought for, will always find its way.